Welcome to San Diego Integral, June 8th, 2024. Our topic today, Reflections on the ICON Conference, featuring members of the Integral community and facilitated by Jerry Golick. Hello, everyone. Welcome to San Diego Integral. Let me just thank everyone for joining us. I'm going to try to facilitate this conversation a little bit. And I want to just start out with, again, I think most of you are familiar with this, but we're going to be talking about this ICON conference, and that ICON stands for the Integral Conference of North America. And that was held in Denver on May 16th through the 19th, so just a few weeks ago. And there were approximately 50 presentations or workshops, and there were talks by such, and I have to say, icons of the integral world, like Ken Wilber, Alan Combs, Roger Walsh was there, Ben Seganti, who is the founder of the Integral European Conference. Craig Hamilton was there, Keith Witt, Steve McIntosh, and lots of others, too many to mention. And then, of course, a lot of people whose names, I wasn't familiar with them, but they're doing amazing work. And maybe one day they will be the icons of the integral world. So a lot of great folks doing brilliant work. And again, I think most of you know, but our own Tom Habib, who may be joining us tonight. He's traveling, but he may drop into the meeting tonight. But Tom was one of the founders and prime organizers of the whole event. So we want to thank him for, putting it together. And there's a lot of work, a lot of risk, really, to putting on such a big conference. And he was the master of ceremonies, and he just did a spectacular job at that. And the other thing about the conference that was important is not only did we get to see presentations and meet, people, maybe somebody we've read their books or we've always, heard about their work, but also we just got to meet each other, and a lot of, again, wonderful folks, wonderful conversations, and so it was really a wonderful event. And I would invite everybody who did not attend to check out the website at weareicon.org, and maybe somebody can type that in the chat for me. And but if you go to weareicon.org, you can see the presenters gallery, all the topics of the presentations, and within another probably week or so, the recordings of all the sessions are going to be available on weareicon.org. And there will be a charge for those because it was quite expensive to hire the video production company and all of the infrastructure that it takes to host all of this. So there will be a charge for the recordings, but recordings of all of the sessions will be available. And this is the icon. Just again, these questions are ones that I kind of in my mind would be arising at this moment, which is that the whole structure is done through a nonprofit setup, and the only if there are any reserves after the expenses are paid, those will go toward putting on ICON in 2 years. So it's going to alternate with the Integral European Conference. So we'll have it here every other year, and then every other year there'll be the one in Europe. And so what I've planned to do for today is to invite people who attended the conference to and have something they'd like to talk about their experience there. Just talk for maybe 5 minutes each on something that kind of caught your attention, something that's alive for you. And as we do that, we're going to try to facilitate like a we space type of conversation. So that's a little bit different than a normal discussion that we might have at work or something like that. This is where we try to drop into the different state experiences, for example, of the states of, we know there's a gross, subtle, and causal states of awareness. And if we drop into the subtle and causal spaces as we're having these conversations, it becomes a different conversation. It can become a generative conversation where we discover something new as we operate as a collective, something that we wouldn't necessarily be able to discover if we were just having a discussion or a debate or something. And what I thought we would do is, so we'll have a few people present something, and then we'll use what they they've talked about as the topics for some breakouts. And also, I'll lead a guided meditation before we drop into that. Here. So, okay, so if everyone would like to assume a comfortable posture, again, most folks here have some type of contemplative practice, so assume a posture that's good for you. And take a few deep breaths. And tune into your physical body's sensations. And that might be your seat on the chair, your feet on the ground, whatever your physical body is feeling. And also the sensation not only of kind of feeling your weight in the chair, for example, but also the sensation of feeling the chair hold you, as in you're not sinking into the ground, nor are you flying up into the air. You're held perfectly, just in the right place to allow you to live and thrive. Get that feeling of being just in the right place in your physical body. And now try to notice or tune into the physical limits of your body, where it stops, what's inside and what's outside. And as you try to find this limit, you might notice that it's somewhat hard to find. We're radiating energy, we're receiving things from the outside world, we're breathing in, we're breathing out. So the limits of our body are actually kind of permeable and always changing. We're in a way, we know we have skin on the outside of our bodies, but also we're kind of a field, an energy field, and we don't really know where that begins and ends. So as we tune into that, the, the physical body as well as kind of the subtle or energetic body, focus on the internal experiences of the physical body. So that would be sensations, feelings. That could be pain, could be fluttering, could be any number of sensations that you're feeling. Um, Anything with the physical senses, sounds, smells. And then also notice what we call the subtle body, which might be thoughts that are arising or energetic movements, images, ideas, colors, daydreams. And notice that inside the body, there's infinite space to explore. There's infinite mystery there. In the inside of the body, with its physical and its subtle aspects, everything is constantly changing, and we could go on forever finding new experiences in the physical body and the subtle body. Now, while maintaining this awareness of the physical and subtle body in the background, move your attention to the outside of the body. So we're going to try to hold both of these, but we're foregrounding the outside. So take a few moments to explore the outside of the physical body. So you might want to touch something that's nearby. You might want to imagine your physical surroundings and then just quickly open your eyes and look to see how well they match your imagination and the physical objects. Move your physical, move your awareness out farther and farther and include your house, your town, the sky, and on out into the stars and the billions of galaxies each containing billions of stars. So just as we're holding the infinite mystery within, in the background, we can also be aware of the infinite mystery on the outside. Now, holding both of those perspectives, notice that there's something unique happening right in this moment, and that is us. So we have a group of people. There are currently 17 of us. In all the places in the universe we could be, we've decided to be together. And all of the infinite mysteries contained within these infinite mysteries as a whole, we've landed here together in some relationship with each other, whatever that might be. So we are all in some way connected. And one thing to consider possibly in this moment would be your intention for being here. Would you like to join with other amazing people and move into a creative, generative, loving space where perhaps it is in being together that we can find renewal, healing, and a shift in our relationship to the challenges of our lives that help us to choose our next steps? So many have come before us to affirm the value of this path. And let's honor their lives and contributions as we move into today's explorations together. As we maintain this field of awareness, we experience more than just a discussion or presentation. We can experience a generative we space. So the invitation here, as you shift your attention back to this meeting, back to your screen, back to the activities of the moment, is to also stay in the meditation. Continue to keep your awareness of the infinite mystery in connection with other mysteries. What might be revealed? Okay, so let's begin by asking if there's anyone who attended the ICON conference, and if there's something that's like, again, alive for you. So you didn't have time to prepare, so you might not remember all of the details of it, but we're not asking you to make a presentation of their presentation, only to say, like, what's alive for you in this present moment that you took from the conference? It's kind of the way that we're going to phrase the question. So I see. So if you would like to do that, I'm going to take like maybe 3 people, and then we'll move into breakouts based on what they've said. So I see Kathy, and then Karen, and see, and Mary have raised your hand. So we'll take those 3, so in that order. And if you would like to maybe talk for, let's try to keep it to like 5 minutes or so. And again, tuning into what's arising for you in this present moment, and about the impact the conference had on you. And so I'll just stop talking and let you go. So Kathy, you're up first.
In our pre-meeting, I started generating ideas, and you saw me not looking at the rest of it. I was scribbling ideas. I thought so much has impacted me, but if I was picking one, at the moment, what seems alive is the Layman Pascal's breakout on Saturday. I don't, who was anybody else in that one? Yeah. I'll admit that Layman Pascal frightens and tantalizes me at the same time. I just cannot picture him like washing dishes or being at the gas station. So but I'm recognizing now that, like, getting closer, that to summarize, I think like the impact it had on me was opening up some new, going to that, his workshop opened up some new things in me, or realized I have some things that I can own up to more. For those that weren't there, what he did, what, like, a typical presentation, but what he had was a huge monitor at the front of the room that was playing psychedelic music and showing psychedelic videos. He had 4 people in chairs at the front left of the room that were meditating. And then he had a woman representing some sort of earth goddess, that she was in a long robe with a spray of sun on her hair. And so Lehman started doing this performance, and he didn't do a talk. He invited us into the performance by just doing a little bit of an introduction and asking us to ask questions. And the woman in the earth garb was sort of moving in a very sensuous way and encouraging the meditators and like sort of massaging their auras. And we know that Layman Pascal is just Mr. Shaman. And the impact of what happened in that, which he maybe did this for a little bit less than half an hour, then I'll tell you what happened next. But the way he showed more what's possible with the pattern breaking and inviting us into the performance in a new way with the music and the movement, and inviting the divine feminine in. And I feel like one way it impacted me was to think more about what intrigues us about shamanism. And I think it's because being a shaman is painful, and you're sort of on the outside. If you're a real, if you're kind of take it for the way he describes it. But I think what impacted me was realizing how much we all really want the direct contact with the divine, but it's not necessarily only the shining, say, face of Jesus where he's about out of strength and fading. There's the part of the divine that is just wild and untamed and just chaotic is the word I eventually came to me as I'm thinking about this. And so I felt like by this, the way I've been kind of resonating with me, just feeling more that connection with that in me. And maybe that's impacted the other people that were there in the same way. And he is kind of a shaman for this group. And one of the questions that somebody asked, like, why are you a shaman for this group? And he gave an articulate answer. I don't remember what it was, but I realized I had a question going in that I wanted to ask Lehman and just didn't have the courage for it, of asking. He's got this term I'm not thinking of right now about the future past, but I wanted to say, how do we bring this in? But the question came in as because of the what was in the room at the time was, how do we, each of us, all of us, the indigenous and non-indigenous, listen to regain some of what we Westerners killed? I didn't word it quite like that, but I'm being a little more specific. But he had this answer that really, if we have the intent with how we listen, we can do as much as we can. And so it's like this pattern breaking, and really bringing in the wild and untamed into what this future human is. Like, there was so much of the presentations that brought in many different valuable parts. And then also for me, because he started talking about the witch down the hall, Terry O'Fallon. And for me, the respect he gave to Terry O'Fallon healed and loosened the meaning of the word witch. And um he invited us all down to join that breakout room. So I was really impressed, and it had an impact on me with the generosity he showed in populating Terry O'Fallon's game that she played on developmental truth and lies. So it's carried with me, and the aspects of his performance. And so I think that's what I wanted to share.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathy. And let's move on to Karen.
Yeah, hi, I'll set my timer because I get carried away and can go on and on here. So yes, ditto to what Kathy said about Layman Pascal's, I don't know what to call it. It was different. And I'd love to see more of that. I mean, this was a very well-balanced conference, I thought, but it was more in the traditional sense of having presenters who were up there and the rest of us sitting in rows and listening. And I envision us, and I know Tom and the other people who put on the conference would like to see more generative, less traditional, more inclusive, participatory, embodied, physical, subtle, causal, etc. Yeah, I was there and it was wonderful. What I come away with, and I'm still high on, well, first of all, the feeling like I'm home. A number of people said this. I'm home. This is where I'm with my people. This is where I belong. And such a few, I'm with people, the way I phrase it, yes, I see some thumbs up. I'm with people who are crazy the same way I'm crazy. I can really be myself and not have to like filter it or dim it down. I can just be who I am and bounce off the people around me, and we're all who we are, and it fits. I went into this, I have an academic background, but I just completely stepped out of that this time. I sat through the presentations without trying to hold on to ideas or take notes, just completely open to what was present in the presentation and in myself, allowing it to pass through and open to the next moment, more like being in the presence of a spiritual teacher. And knowing that I could go back and these were all recorded, and I could go back to follow up on anything I wanted to retain intellectually. So what I came away with, I like big pictures. I love big pictures, the biggest possible. That's why I've been reading Ken Wilber all these years and decades, the biggest possible pictures. What I heard over and over and over again from the presenters, from whatever specific background they were coming from, whether it was in business or psychotherapy or you name it, we're all seeing the same big picture that I've put together from my background as a cultural historian, that there is a trajectory to big history. There's a very clear trajectory, and that trajectory is constant emergence of the next level of complexity, of form, that contains a new level of complexity of consciousness. The universe is evolving. It's been evolving for 13.8 billion years, and we on this planet have reached the point now where we are collectively opening to the next great emerging, which is going to be spiritual as much as material, as much as social, as much as business, and so on. The incoming integral world, and the spirituality of it, the consciousness where we can be consciously in touch with our subtle selves, our causal selves, our divine selves, our transcendent selves, and that we can consciously bring this wisdom and insight into all aspects of our life. And I'm co-reading, I'm in Nomale Pereira's group that's reading The Religion of Tomorrow by Ken Wilber, which is very much his message. This incoming world order that we are consciously trying to help midwife, that we are consciously, and so many of these brilliant, enlightened people, and like all of us here, and we're seeing the same big picture, and it is so hopeful for the planet. And this is the message I am passionately engaged in trying to get out. And in addition to that, in my few remaining seconds, so many connections and projects that are now forming. and connecting this person with that person, and now we have this new thing. What is coming into the world through ICON and IEC and so on, future conferences? Something very big is emerging via this conference, and it was delightful and wonderful and a terrific honor to be there. So I'll put down my talking stick now.
Great, thank you, Karen. Okay, Mary.
I'm glad that neither of you before me stole my thunder, because I don't have much to say, but some of you were actually there too. So the surprising event that I just loved and carried it through all those, those days, as well as since then, was our preparation in the morning. It was morning movement. And I've never done I was going to say martial arts before, so not familiar with it. So that was new and strange for me. But this was pretty much Aikido, and Aikido has always been like I want to learn more about it, but it's pretty rare that I even hear anything about it. But it would be like on conflict resolution, and either Jerry or Karen or I think Kathy was there too one of the mornings. You can add or correct me, but when we were doing this, it's not like somebody's attacking you, but here we are making a stance and making sure that we're grounded. So he'd go around and he would see, whether our posture was straight and whether we looked like we were in balance. And then there were like approaches that this was the coolest thing, that if something is approaching you, and it is not saying like gonna attack, but that's sort of a natural interpretation, something is coming at you. What we learned and practiced over and over again was to turn toward that and then make an extra step and end up going along with that other potential attack person and just like gliding with them. And so somatically, that was a good thing for me to do. And I got it backwards lots of times. And, Jerry knows. But I thought of that different times during some of the talks. And in particular, when Dwayne Elgin was talking, he said, domination doesn't work. And I don't know if he put this or I added this, but I put like Aikido, domination doesn't work. You must dance with it. So some of the things that, that like maybe a new idea we heard or somebody's saying, no, I don't believe that at all, would be to have a sense that there's a way to make this move in your relationship with that person. And I sensed it and I felt it a number of times during the rest of the conference. The Aikido master had been practicing for 35 years. His name is Daniel Kirkpatrick. And one of the things that I liked about it also inadvertently, I mean, he was having an eye problem. So he had the lights kind of low, which, and he had posters are the main things about it. I liked that too, but yeah, conflict resolution practice in movement, and that can translate to everything. That's all. Oh, the other thing I want to say about it, that for 3 days, I mean, 3 days in a row for 1.5 hours each of those days. So when you think about how long any of these conferences, any of these speakers lasted, that was 4.5 hours. So I was like all over Tom. Afterwards, I was like, oh, I wanted to jump up and say, let's recognize Daniel Kirkpatrick. But it weren't that, there were maybe 8 or 10 people that were there. So, but it was wonderful. And we even played with it a little bit. One of the last night when we did the ecstatic dance, because some of us were doing some of the approaches and then the turns and you know, amongst everything else that we were doing in movement. And that was really good for me to make that connection. So that's all, I think.
Great, thank you, Mary. At this point, what I'd like to do, so we've heard 3 shares about the ICON conference, and for me, they were very heartfelt shares. Karen talking about the shamanism and the kind of, Catherine talking about the shamanism, the kind of wild possibilities that she experienced as a result of that presentation or that experience. Karen talking about the universe evolving and sensing a common kind of evolutionary purpose, and Mary in the movement and the movement finding application in the rest of the conference and the rest of her world and her life from those exercises. So those were the 3 things that were expressed. And so what we'd like to do is move into a breakout. And I'm calling, I think, let's see, we have 19 people. So yeah, I think we could do groups of 5 or 4 or 5, whatever works, Kathy. And we'll go for 20 minutes. And again, kind of using what you've heard today from the meditation we did earlier, from these 3 speakers who just shared their experience. What comes alive for you in the present moment when you consider that? Like when you consider what you've heard already today here. And as you move into the groups, I'd ask everyone to take a few minutes before like jumping into talk, maybe take just maybe 30 seconds or a minute or so of stillness to drop into the physical body. And one thing to notice, again, I've just found this helpful, is like the discursive mind might have some ideas or thoughts of a presentation that I want to make here in this breakout group. And if we can let that part go and tune into the physical body and see what is arising in the present moment, that's when a generative, like for me, that's when I notice a generative thought, like something that I wasn't thinking of or I hadn't noticed, that my body mind is telling me is the correct thing. So if you can move into that space, that's a helpful practice. And sometimes the things that show up might seem unrelated. So the body mind's reaction may bring up a metaphor. It may, like I was thinking of, this image came up to me of my Uncle Frank's farm. When I was a kid, I would go visit his farm. Like, what did that have to do with what I heard today? But there's something there for me. There was some connection for me. So the point being that in this generative space, this quote discussion can be like nonlinear. That doesn't mean it's unimportant. That means it can lead to kind of an understanding prior to language that's trying to make something apparent to us. So again, it's just work on this, dropping into this kind of causal space. And one of the kind of prompts that might be helpful would be to ask, what is alive for me in this present moment? And so again, we'll go into breakouts whenever you're ready, Kathy. Are there any questions before we move into the breakouts? Breakout sessions are not recorded. Okay, welcome back, everyone. As often in these breakout rooms, it's like the discussion gets really rich and beautiful and touching and moving, and then it ends, and I'm like, who's in charge of this operation anyway? Yeah, we had a very rich discussion. I would at this point like to take maybe if there are any kind of reflections of something. I'd like to just take something if there, we always just in the 12-step groups, they'll say sometimes, is there a burning desire? Does someone have something that happened maybe in your breakout that really touched you or moved you that you would like to share? And just take 1 or 2 of those, and then we'll go through another round of sharing about ICON. Regis?
Yeah, so at the end there, I didn't attend the meeting either in person or virtually. so I couldn't really speak much to that. But what I was grateful for is that we have something like this. And I was reflecting at the end on my participation in really cutting edge groups in the cryptocurrency space called DAOs. And so these are all decentralized autonomous organizations. And I'm really struck by the opportunity to do, integral talk there. And one group that I co-founded is about trust creation, leadership, and conflict transformation. And one of the things that I'm trying to do there is bring a lot of integral related stuff in there. And it would sure just be nice to have people from San Diego Integral or other places to, give a more thorough underpinning there. They're getting it because I've been talking about it for a long time, but it sure is nice to have more integral thinkers in the space, and especially in really cutting edge spaces where people are doing, really cutting edge cultural and technological and financial, work. So the other thing I said was just, it always seems like there's an awful lot of really older people in these meetings, and I was wondering if there were younger people at the icon. You know what I mean? So, and that was another sort of thing that I was looking at in terms of not just having conferences, but also reaching out to groups like the ones that I'm participating in, but also younger people to get them interested in. And I was wondering, if anybody from SDI would be willing to come, on a regular basis to some of our meetings and give talks and look at some of the work we're doing, or even have me present what we do, because it's all really interesting. And I wonder, what effect you guys might have on the practical side of the picture with groups like that. So also just, trying to reach out to younger people, and we have a fair number of younger people in our groups. So these are all things that were kind of burning for me coming out of the meeting or the breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you, Regis. Yeah, the one part of what you were saying about the younger people. Yes, there were quite a few younger people at the icon. It was great to see, and I love that energy. And again, a lot of times the young, brilliant ones would speak or something, and I just go like, hope for the future, right there. That's what I experience in that present moment. Yeah. Anyone else want to make a comment from the breakout? And then if not, we'll move on. Okay. I hope you guys aren't hearing a lot of background noise. I have a leaf blower outside the door, but it shouldn't last too long. Okay. So what we'd like to do now then is to go through another round of what we did before, which is to have people who attended the icon and have some would like to just take, say, 5 minutes to just talk about what really touched you at the conference. And then we will use those, and we'll take maybe 3 people, and then those people, what they say will be our topic for the next breakout. And I would like to make one special, I see Trudy's raised her hand. I would like to make one special request to see if, I noticed that Tom and Christine have joined us. And again, Tom as the founder of the whole enterprise. If you would you like to go and take, say, 5 minutes to just tell us what it was like for you? Because I know not only was it a challenge for you, it was also, I mean, based on talking to you about it, it was a moving experience for you as well. So I'd like to go with Tom, and then we'll go with Trudy, and then we'll see who else would like to join.
Thank you,
Take it away,
Jerry.
Tom.
Thank you. I want to participate as an attendee for a moment. And when Roger Walsh called for professional agnostic intermediaries, that really I've been thinking about a lot. Because if you look up the word agnostic and understand kind of the role and duties they played, in the philosophical tradition, and then you tie on both words you put in the beginning, the end of it, professional agnostic intermediaries. What you have is a lower right prescription of how integral is going to get integrated more deeply. Yeah, Gnostic. Thank you, Karen. Oh, Eloy, thank you. I meant Gnostic. Intermediaries. But what you have is a lower right prescription of how integral is going to get more widely disseminated into the nooks and crannies that are going to make a difference. Because it does take, we've talked about at times as spiral wizards. But of course, that's only one line of development. And it's not necessarily like one of the things I loved was when Alan Colmes brought up the idea that the next growth, both on his chart, is going to be intersubjectivity. And I think it's going to be these professional Gnostic intermediaries that are going to be able to create that intersubjectivity that can be felt. Because when it's felt, people are always going, like what Brother David said in Budapest, they have that state experience and they go, what was that? And that's the beginning of languaging it and disseminating the information. So that really meant a lot to me, what Roger had said on that. And I've been noodling that since I've gotten back, because I thought that was right on, and it fits so well Alan Colmes' call for another axis on the Wilbur-Colmes ladders called intersubjectivity. Now, I'd love to see that graphic done out. Surprised nobody has done that out and labeled, what would now be three-dimensional, and really begin to articulate what does it mean to include intersubjectivity with state and stages. And then really begin to articulate that a little bit. So those are my initial impressions as a participant.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. Let's go ahead then and invite Trudy.
Okay, first of all, Tom, thank you for all the work you did, and particularly under the circumstances. My condolences on the loss of your brother. That had to be incredibly difficult to work your way through this. So I really appreciate what you did. And Christine, as the support person, I'm sure this took a lot of your time and effort as well. So I just wanted to appreciate that. So what's coming up for me? Where I feel this. We're so privileged to be able to attend this, but privileged to be at a place in life and financially stable that we can participate in this type of philosophy. And what bothers me is the real world, the other real world, where people are struggling. And I had a conversation with a gal out of my exercise class on Friday. And she participates in my discussion group some of the time, where I'm trying to bring some of the tools of integral to help people in their real life. How do you find stability, objectivity, and not get sucked into the narrative and the anxiety that's going on in the world. And what she shared with me is distress over her son who is trying to work and get a degree, and seeing that there's not any opportunity for younger people. They can't afford a house. The things that we are privileged to have and take advantage of, they're frozen out of. And so it bothers me, this massive inequality. And integral, yes, but we maybe will have some answers, but when and how? So I think we're moving in that direction, but in a way, we're kind of in our lofty tower pontificating about a lot of theory, but how do we get boots on the ground? That's my comment.
Thank you, Trudy. Okay, and we could have time for probably one or even two more shares about the conference. If anybody else, I know, Elo, you raised your hand earlier. If you're still here, there you are. Did you want to go or?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, Tom actually talked a bit about what I was going to talk about. The Roger Walsh talk about Gnostic intermediaries. There were so many aspects to it, but things like it was a call. It was a calling. Like we need to go out and do the work, gather the wisdom, and be able to transmit it and apply it in the real world, like Trudy's saying. And what occurred to me when I heard him talking was that the presenters, for the most part, are, well, I won't qualify. The presenters are Gnostic intermediaries, and those of us working in the integral and spiral dynamic spaces, we are kind of like the lay practitioners, right? We're not professional or but anyway, so one of the things I said in the other breakouts was that I love that the thing I love about these conferences is there's so many variations and what I termed integral adjacent topics that are brought out, and so we're not all just listening to Ken Wilber anymore. It's like there's all these branches and flows and creativity and explorations of different spaces and ideas. And so just to give one example that tied in with the Gnostic intermediaries is our San Diego friend Matt Kreinheiter did a thing on integral entrepreneurism, and what he was saying was that he was calling for second tier people to get into entrepreneurship, and one of the things that landed for me was he said, people ask him, well, why would you want to be an entrepreneur when you've developed it into a second tier person? And he said, for the same reason you developed into a second tier person, because you're called to. And so I think there were a lot of moments in the conference where there were just hooks that were just powerful. So I'm complete.
Okay, thank you, Eloy. Um, I could jump in for just a minute with some of my reflections, and of course they touch in with what others have said. For me, one of the, like Matt Kreinheider was one of the ones that really, I just something about his work I appreciate. There were three that I flagged. One was Matt Kreinheider. The other was Adam Leonard, and some might recognize the name. The book, Integral Life Practice book. It was like many of us, used it as a guide for our practice for years. That was co-authored with Ken Wilber and Terry Patton, and Adam Leonard was one of the co-authors there. He worked. He's worked in Silicon Valley at Google for a number of years in their leadership training program. So one of the people who wrote the Integral Life Practice book is in leadership training at Google. So this is again showing how, to me, it demonstrates how this integral, and I'll refer to it not just integral theory, but integral consciousness that is working its way into the larger structures that are, that kind of run the world. Another one was a guy named Farsam Shadab, and he's in the tech world, and he's working on, for example, you know how in a web browser it says HTTP something or / whatever, and then, well, there's going to be a new one of those. Like it's not HTTP, it's a new complete, like the whole blasted web is, I don't know how any of that works, and that's why I love this stuff. But it's going to change the way the whole internet interacts to do things like in 3 and 4 dimensions instead of the 2 dimensions that it's operating now. That's what he said. I don't know what it means, but I just love the fact that integral consciousness is working its way into these structures that are going to be running the world. And to me, that's another example of what Tom and you and others talked about, the Gnostic intermediary. That's what Roger Walsh is talking about. I think it's the people who bring this consciousness into the world in some way. That's kind of my understanding of that. And
It's nice to
and
have a
addresses,
name for that.
yeah, and it's kind of what Trudy was asking for, I think. Like, how does it work? So it's interesting how that theme is, working its way into our reflections today.
Yeah, that's
Um,
literally the thing I'm engaged in is, but I just didn't know that there was a name for it or that someone had come up with it. I was just kind of doing it as a natural extension of sort of my integral, nature. So I love Trudy's, beautifully emotional call for us, all of us to do that, and it's nice for me to know that I'm doing that in a very natural, unthinking way, but that someone else is smart enough to have thought of a good name for it and give me some place to get inspiration and guidance.
And I think that for me, that's something where, Ken Wilber always says, he didn't invent integral consciousness. He was just, found some language to describe it. It's arising because it's arising, not because he made it up or something. So this Gnostic intermediary is something that is naturally occurring, but also with consciousness behind it, it can be, more of an intentional pursuit. So we're about, I think at this point, we could take one more. If there is anybody else who attended the conference who wanted to share something, we could probably take one more of those and still have time for a 20-minute breakout.
I do one more, Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I'm gonna put on my organized presenter hat, and I was just amazed at how people came together and the role the San Diego Integral people played, like Karen, Jerry, Christine, Eloy from a distance. But we were all focused. It was like we're all on our game together, because Karen was literally offering to walk me down the hallway to keep people off of me so that I could focus in the morning and open up that space. Because you can imagine between the tech people and all the volunteers were great. God almighty. But all these people, the flow they created, and like I made Karen sit in the front row because I was just insecure without her being close by. Because I had, people I could just go to. And Jerry, I mean, God, the number of emails I sent you last minute to get things done. I mean, this is all what creates that smooth operation. Because my fear was getting all stressed out and then trying to get up there in open space. And man, I don't know what the deity's got planned for me, but it sure as hell has been challenging my psychic ass major time. And I mean, it's been tough. I mean, some of you know what happened. Like on this trip back for the memorial, I can feel the emotion just flooding me. And, I don't know what I was watching the other day. It was some YouTube thing about people taking care of each other. And I just started crying. And I know what it is. It's all that feeling I stuffed to do this. But anyways, I was amazed at how people came together. I really was. Is that we really pulled off quite a thing in doing everything from the car ride to Boulder and coming up with those morning things you guys helped me do. We're in the car, 5 of us together, and you got to give us something Colorado based.
And Mary did it. You remember?
Yeah, Mary came up with a great one. She's not here today. Oh yeah,
Oh,
she
she
is.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, you came up with that snarling. What was it, Mary?
I didn't make it up. It was something I was just looking, online. And I think it had to do with
Moose.
a moose bull, something.
Hanging moose bull.
Yeah, that was fun. I mentioned in our breakout group that it was interesting to see the perspective kind of through some time that I spent with you and with other people of what all is involved. And I mean, and we wouldn't even scratch the surface on that, the kind of things that have to be done to really try to get that international cooperation. And I liked that Ben say, did I say this in the whole group or did I say this just in the breakout? When Ben said, he was starting with his feet saying, I am offering my mail list. And I was like, I didn't know that'd be such a big deal. But it was, to another organization wanting to expand the global outreach of groups to cooperate with each other. Because I didn't think about that they might be infighting or whatever, or that things might fizzle out because sometimes volunteers are, I don't know, can be like whirling dervishes. Whatever, it was just, I loved to have us kind of put that seed of thought in our mind in the ways that we can network and move forward. And I could liken that to the same thing with, if you feel something's coming at you in the conflict resolution part of like what they taught us in the Aikido, you take a step toward them and then shift and then glide them along. I mean, I just feel that move now after all that practice. So Tom, you weren't here when I was telling how great I thought that was with Kirkpatrick, and that was 4.5 hours worth of time, which was very really influenced me and helped me each day.
Okay, thank you, Mary. All right, well, I think maybe it's time for another breakout, so we can do something similar. Kathy, you can, I think we have like 14, so Yeah, I don't know whether we want to do smaller groups, so groups of four or five, if you can do that. And again, um, our prompt for the breakouts would be to, you know, based on what's happened already today here. So we've heard from we heard from 3 people, and then we had a breakout and had discussions. We did a meditation before. We just heard 4 or 5 other people share their experiences at Icon, which, you know, very at times emotional, heartfelt. So drop into the space. How did that affect you? What did that bring up in you in this moment? And so when we get into the breakouts, we can kind of, again, take a little bit of silence to kind of drop into the space, connect with each other, and then see what arises in the present moment. What again, a good prompt is, what is alive for me right now? So unless there are any questions, Kathy, you can drop us into the breakouts whenever we're ready. Breakout sessions are not recorded. Welcome back from the breakouts. So at this point, is there anything that occurred in the breakouts that anyone would like to share? Again, the kind of idea of the burning desire, something that really touched you?
I'd like Wheaton to share what he shared in the breakout room, if you don't mind.
Which point, Tom? I'm happy to share.
Wheaton had a long history in humanistic psychology, going to conferences, and I asked him the difference, and we got into a dialogue about it. Could you summarize that, Wheaton?
I can. The humanistic psychologies in my day were full of people whose main wish was to, at the end of the presentation, be able to hand out their cards and have more consultation customers. I was one of them. I didn't get that at all. Most of the people who presented were in business and were open to consultations and open to mentorships and open to working with people in one way or another. But the commercialization and the using the time for my presentation as a sample that you can get more if you come, I just wasn't there. It was very, very genuine. A lot of people spoke just from their heart. The intellectual people did their best to speak from their growing edge of intellectual. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm trying to learn more. It was very, very genuine and very beautiful and very, very moving. It created a, you know, it's kind of lonely having all the kind of integral thoughts that most of us carry around and not being able to share it directly, and to be in a place that was pretty simple to share what's on your heart and your mind, and having the leaders of the place do that themselves was very beautiful for me. There's my friend Karen. You too, Karen.
Great, thank you, Amy.
Yes, thank you for asking, Tom.
Okay, anybody else? We're getting close to the end of our formal time here. Anybody else with some? Mary, go ahead.
Here I am again. Maybe it'll save me needing to write an email to Tom if I say this in front of the group. But I heard from a few people over the course of tonight that they couldn't come for either, for a number of different reasons. But, one of them, of course, was financial. And I said, well, maybe we could have some sort of applying for a scholarship to at least be able to view the tapings, the recordings, because those are, when they're done, is there any more expense to send them out? And I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything, and you don't need to answer at all, but I just want to get it off my plate of the idea that I thought, can we get it out there that, you know, if whatever it costs, you know, to somebody could apply for it just to see the recordings. So that's all.
I think so. And in 6 months, they're going to all be at Integral Life. So for 6 months, they're going to be for sale for people that didn't attend the conference. Don't hold me to it. I think it's going to be $97 the entire thing. And then after 6 months, they're going to be on Integral Life, because we do want to get it out there.
So when they go on Integral Life in 6 months, will that be for free?
Well,
Or will there be a charge then too?
you would need a membership to get on.
Of course.
Integral Life. But if you
Right.
have that, it'll be for free, yeah.
Got it.
Kabir?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to offer just that, you know, oh dear. The woman, is she still here? The woman that was here that called us to the privilege of all this. You know,
Trudy, I think it was.
Trudy, thank you. Yeah, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't have the privilege of engaging in some conversation like this with some group or some individuals like this and feeling the richness and the nourishment. And I'm a quadriplegic and I'm mostly homebound. I just have the real benefit of having been able to spend a lot of years and money on forging really wonderful global connections. And Trudy mentioned our privilege and like how much of that is kind of going away. And I'm hearing the voice of Bio Akomalafe echoing in my back about, like, you know, welcome to the party. We've been singing these songs for 200 years. And I feel like this is one of the things that the integral community is really invited to, is that the orange economic system that we're all bound by, that just seems like the water we breathe, like it won't work. And there's so many examples of people trying to enact really, really good ideas today that remain because of the blinders of this global socioeconomic system, like aloof and not subject to review or question or enlightenment by countless other groups, you know, whether it's indigenous people or the global poor or you name it. And so there's a real challenge opportunity, I think, for us to step into asking hard questions about how the hell do you pay your bills and not use the cash that burns the very substrate you're trying to protect. So it just, Tom, I might offer that if you just made a simple thing about like, I've had the benefit of, you know, I don't have a lot of economic resource myself. And so I've had the benefit of a lot of scholarships to things. And it comes only when the people offering make a space for that. And then I joyfully fill something out that says, like, here's me as a human being and involved in this field, and here's why I want a scholarship, and here's what I'm gonna do that with that energy. So anyway, just, yeah, thanks all for listening to that.
Right, folks. Well, we're at the 6 o'clock hour here, so I think we're going to bring the formal part of the meeting to a close. And so I know some people might have to sign off. So I just want to thank everybody for being here and participating. And you know, again, there's so many different ways in which that's done. People, you know, sharing your little pieces of what was so important to you, or others of you, you know, holding the space for the rest of us to do that. And so I appreciate everyone being here. And we, again, will take it up again in a month. And we haven't selected a speaker for that yet, but we'll announce that as soon as we know that. So if anybody has to go, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time. And then again, we'll have the informal part of the meeting starting now, which is just a social time. And that will be more or less unfacilitated. It's helpful if there are people in the queue to raise your hand.
Well, the only
Aaron, one
reason
of the things I mentioned in the breakout was that listening to the shares and also from the breakouts that we had in the online lounge after each day, is that there was a sense of reverence by the
Oh.
participants. You know, like just.
Yes. The magic happened
Mm-hmm.
all through.
I really like that word, Eloy. I'm
Reverence.
using that word more and more now because there's something about, calling forth the reverence of a moment. And there's something about how it becomes more inclusive in terms of the purpose why we're there.
well, the reason why I brought up that, just to clarify if it happens, because I lost my mother on May 10th. And
Regis.
Yes.
So I went down to Florida and found out basically on a Saturday. I was there by Tuesday, and she was gone by Friday. And so came as a real big surprise to me, but I was mentioning in one of the breakout rooms how transformational it was, the process of dealing with that. And how grateful I was for all of you, and other groups like the Gebser groups and things that I participated in really helped me to maintain, because the whole thing that I said in my men's group when I went was that I just wanted to be the man my mom knew that I was, for that period. Right. And so in some sense, it gave me an orienting principle to sort of handle the process with. And it sounds to me like even the organization of this conference and being in the integral sort of frame of mind that you have to be when you're holding that much space for that many people might have also been kind of a orienting principle for you. I don't know if you found that to be the case, but certainly was the case for me.
Were you there when she passed, Regis?
To her last breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to pick up on the felt sense. Tom, this is something that you'd mentioned earlier, and as you speak about reverence and then share about your loss with your brother, and Regis as you're sharing as well with your mother, and just want to bring in the importance of the emotion and the connection. I will not recall exactly, I think it was a Maya Angelou quote around, they'll forget what you said and all this stuff, but they'll never forget how they made you feel. And that in this whole question of how people are attracted into integral spaces, and, having been playing in these for a number of years, one of the things that I'm aware of is I can be enamored with all the great ideas. I mean, there's some brilliant minds at these things, but how do I feel connected? What is that sense of the space? I mean, somebody was speaking to, like Craig Hamilton's meditation and, and other things when it rises to the surface in a different way than ideas, that there's something more in the substrate that activates a feeling inside of us, that there is a resonance with this, and that we come into this collective space of reverence together, that shared we space then becomes its own magnetic draw.
Yes.
Which is something that I've appreciated, Jerry, too, about how you structured our time. Thank you for your hosting today and the invitations to really draw us into that kind of a space. And and I'm just checking in with myself right now as I talk, that I don't get too much in my own head, but to really come back into the relational space of seeing each of your faces for those of you who are on camera, and also wanting to feel into those who have not yet spoken, and respecting the right to remain silent if they don't have something to share, but to create the opening invitation for, like, Judy, I see you're still with us, or Marjorie, and if you have something that you want to weave into this time, that creating that explicit opening and invitation as well.
I have to go, everybody. I love you, and it's been really wonderful seeing you all. Thanks again for everything.
See you, Kabir.
Also, Rich,
Good to see you, brother.
Good being with you, Kabir.
be well.
Thank you.
Yes, the subtle energies are real. They're as real as electricity. We are just moving into an era where we will be aware of them and can deal with them deliberately and consciously. Like, not very long ago, we were clueless about electricity, and look what we're doing with electricity now. What we will be doing with these subtle energies, in the we spaces, the possibilities this opens for us.
I'm excited, Karen, for how that shows up here in real time. That, yes, that learning, but I'm also, feeling that potential. I feel an excitement that arises in me when I feel that potential here. I don't know if you're signing. I saw you wave your hand, Eli, if you're...
No, waving goodbye to Judy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Judy. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Eli. Thank you for the invite, Eric. I'm also in the grieving modality. It's not a brother sister, but it's extended family members, and I'm aware of the high numbers of people that are dying daily across the United States as we are going through a strange time. So I just didn't want to try and speak to. In the small group, I could speak, but in the larger group, becomes more obvious that I'm neurologically divergent. My stuttering stops, and my cognitive functioning. And I just wanted to express appreciation for all of your beautiful minds and hearts, and for your generosity to share the conference highlights with me. I'm one of those that wasn't there, but appreciate meeting with you. So thank you. And bowing out. Okay. All right. All of you stay safe. All right. Love you all. Bye.
Good night.
Yeah, I'd
Good night. Sorry.
good night. I would have liked to ask her, but let's see, is there anybody else? Yeah, anybody that didn't. Eric, did you not go to the conference? How was this for you, hearing it? You didn't get to hear the conference. You only get to hear our reflections on it. And I guess you said some of it already, but also Marjorie or Regis, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, well, maybe just briefly to say, and I want to hear to Marjorie and Regis. I think my orientation is always to bring things back to now, and how do we practice that in real time. And I was really intrigued by, like, Tom, when you mentioned the professional Gnostic intermediary, was it? And I'm not familiar with that combination of words before, and just trying to feel into that. There might be a definition of that, but what would it feel like for me to try to lean into that as a role, or as a way of being to take on? And how can I feel that, and what's the transmission of that? Because I think there's always so much to our words that's deeper than the words themselves. And yeah, and allowing that and taking the risks for that to happen by saying things that that part of me would be maybe wanting to hold back, but just to allow it to come through as it does. Yeah. And I'm curious, Marjorie, too. We haven't heard from you yet tonight. If you have something I want to hear.
Yeah, I did share in the small group, but yeah, it's been wonderful to hear from those of you that were there, and I am one of the ones that I would have attended online if I could have afforded it, but I didn't have the $200 to do it, so I would appreciate. It's good to hear that the recordings might become available. I am a member of Integral Life, so maybe I'll get those recordings later. But even while the event was going on, I knew it was going on, and I was holding you all in my thoughts and prayers as to, that it would all be, that you all would be having an enlightened experience, and that I knew that you would be sharing with us at some point. Yeah, one of the things that came to my mind about the question of the topic of the future human, and I remember working with Barbara Marx Hubbard and her universal human that she talked about and she envisioned, and then I've also heard Ken Wilber talk about how he had envisioned that the tipping point of a 10% of the population reaching integral, and in a recent talk he said something about it hasn't happened, it's not happening, and that the level green seems to be frozen at where they are. There seems to be stuck or something to that effect. And so in terms of the future human, what we're envisioning, I'm just wondering if within that vision there is leaving open the potential for so-called shadow as part of the future human, or is this future human world going to be some sort of utopia where there is no more shadow? I don't even know if that would be possible, or if that would even be preferable to not have shadow. I mean, shadow to me, I'm beginning to see the beauty in it, and so I'm just curious about the topic of future human. What does that actually, what is that vision for it? What does that feel like when you're envisioning a future human? And then the other thing that came to my mind was where we are now in terms of the law of cause and effect. So where we find ourselves now was intended or was put into motion at some point in the past, so that it's now, we're now seeing the effect of what was visioned or envisioned, or maybe not, maybe the opposite of what was envisioned is present now. So from my perspective, if I cannot appreciate where I am now, I won't be able to appreciate where I'm going. So I'm kind of like wanting to bring into my moment. I say it to myself as I want what I already have. I want what already is, or I want to be in gratitude or appreciation or in honor of what exists now, so that I'm not necessarily always thinking that the future human is where it's going to be at, because where it's at is now, and it's always now. So those are the kinds of questions that if I had been there, or if I had been participating, I would have been asking those questions of the presenters. In particular, I would have loved to have heard what Ken Wilber might have had to have said to a question like that. So that's my sharing. Thank you. Thanks for asking. Thank you, Eric, for asking.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of question asking at the conference, in my opinion, especially online. We didn't get to ask questions at all, and it seemed like time was limited for questions in the presentations. So I don't think you would have got a in-depth answer from anybody
Yeah,
from what I saw.
thanks,
You know
Eli.
what, Marjorie, and I gotta run in a minute because social obligations I gotta do right now. But anyways, this idea of now, rather than just the future human, for me personally, I experience it as living in the abundance that's occurring now. And a few moments ago, when Eric was speaking, I could feel Rumi's field where words weren't necessary, because it wasn't just the resonance was cohering among us as a group. And it was wonderful, because I think of that as the progress we're making. And there needs to be a leading edge that kind of pushes the boundary back a bit. And the evolutionary process seems psychoactive enough that it begins to disseminate down and through. So I think your point's right. And other people said this at the conference, the future's here. Not for everyone, but it's here. It'll be wonderful. We don't have to travel to Denver. You just go to the grocery store and you're in that resonance space, that coheres. But it does at times anyways. Even people that, they can't language it, but they can still participate on it. I mean, we all find that occasionally. And I think those are the psychoactive seeds we're planting that are gonna accelerate it in that direction. So
Thank you. Yeah, I like the notion of we are the ancestors of our heirs.
Yeah.
And so as an ancestor, what is it that I would want my heirs to know about me and us as a collective? So yeah, it really is interesting to look at it from that kind of past, present, and future is all actually here now.
right.
Marjorie, I love what you said about starting to see the beauty in the shadow.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of shadow work to do individually and collectively. But I am starting to reimagine all of the great wisdom traditions. I think the shadow, it's not a bug, it's a feature. And to your question, will there be shadow in the future human? I'm going to go straight to Ken Wilber. And they're dark shadows. He said Ken Wilber said the Darth Vader move is possible at every stage, all the way up into the clear light. And because each level up, each stage up we go is what he said, 10 times more powerful in dealing with the world than the one before. So if we take that Darth Vader turn, but then what a story, how many of us bought tickets, waited in line to see the Star Wars movie? I mean, it's that this is part of how we move forward. I agree with you, it is part of the beauty, even when it seems like it isn't. The shadow will be with us, and working with it will be part of our task. So many of us are psychotherapists. I'm not, but so many in this group. I mean, we are equipped, and this is our challenge, and it's a beautiful challenge. Actually, it's exciting. What a thrilling story.
Yeah. Thank you. I like that. I sort of like it, liken it to the fairy tale about the story of the Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
And I rephrase it for myself as the beauty in the beast.
Yeah.
Not Beauty and the Beast, but the Beauty in the Beast, because that beast actually is, well, beautiful. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm doing in the work that I do in the crypto space with these organizations is that even though this parallel system is booting itself up, new currencies coming and also new kinds of organizations, it's a little bit like, Russia in the 90s, when everyone said, oh, Russia is now freer than it ever was. Well, it's not really, because those people have been ruled by absolutists for 1,000 years. They have no competence whatsoever at being democratic. And so it just became a kleptocracy. So they were, the average street thug selling, drugs on the street corner could suddenly be a billionaire because that was the freedom that was given in this new capitalist system they found themselves in. Too often in the cryptocurrency thing, I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried and these kinds of things all happen in that space, but there's a whole lot of us in that space that are fighting for the more integral, more parallel system, more human side of this picture. And so one of the things that we do in our thing is to try to integrate the shadow. And Keegan and Leahy's book about an everyone culture that talks about deliberately developmental organizations is a huge part of that. And so I feel like, getting outside of just being in nice feel-good groups like this, where we're all on the same pattern, actually doing the really difficult re-educational work to bring people who have been in this abusive system for a long time and get them out of the escapism that they think they got into just by being in a collective, and actually making them do the difficult work of figuring out how to offload a lot of the shadow that they didn't know they had. And so you can actually see many organizations that organize themselves, even Wilbur's own, integral movement in Boulder kind of fell prey to this, at some point. And so how do we learn lessons from that sort of thing and integrate that? And so our specific group is trying to help, the people who want it. And there's a lot of people who don't know they want it. So it's a long educational road, but it's actually the rubber meets the road version of what I think of integral as being, So I'm working really hard to try to bring an integral perspective and a tier 2 perspective in this side of the thing. So it's actually really nice to talk to integral people about this stuff, because normally I just have to assume no one knows anything about integral in this space. And so, so I really encourage any of you who are interested in that to, start coming into groups that are trying to implement that sort of stuff, and use the place where you are to help, move the integral thing, in another direction, because we're all older, so we also have a certain amount of wisdom to impart. And the fact that we're all integral thinkers is also, it makes it almost more crucial for you to be out there on the front lines with a group that's actually trying to help itself, but doesn't really know how to do it. So I'm glad that I've found an opportunity to apply what I've learned being around you guys, and grateful for your monthly thanks here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Regis. It's the challenge is to communicate with the people around us from a place of what second tier understanding, without using any of the jargon. To have absorbed and metabolized it so much that we just communicate from that place in normal language. And that's one of the things in our little ghetto, it's very easy. We learn the jargon quickly, but then it's hard to get out of the habit of using the jargon. So that's definitely one of my challenges, I find, is, and I met, I at the conference, I teamed up with I met and engaged with a few other people whose passion is metabolizing the second tier integral worldview enough that we can communicate about it in normal language.
Well,
That's
more
part of our
specifically,
challenge.
my idea about that is that how do you inform someone with a new epistemic view, a new ontological view, without resorting to epistemic or ontological violence? So I'm being really specific now, not necessarily saying, you know, because I've got to use some terms because they're just not vernacular terms in red or, you know, green to talk about some of the stuff we talk about. But at the same time, you know, also trying to do it non-violently is a real challenge, you know, or without epistemic violence or without saying you're wrong or bad for thinking like a red or an orange or green, you know. So this is all a really interesting challenge. And I think the thing that we were talking about before is the thing that enables it. The fact that we're all so heart filled here and that everyone's so compassionate is the thing that creates the space for us to shift. And if any random person just showed up in this group, I think they'd all feel at home, even if they didn't know the jargon. And then they would be like, well, this is such a nice group. Why wouldn't I want to learn the jargon? Because why wouldn't I then want to meet these people's hearts where they are with the words that they use and with the epistemic view that they have or the ontological view they have? And so that's the superpower of groups like this to me, is that you end up, you know, you have all this stuff, but then you're also leading with your heart to some great degree. And I see that every time I'm in one of these groups, whether it's this group or Jeremy's group or whatever. There's just such an enormous wisdom in the way everyone does things here. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Regis. There's a lot of richness in what you were just sharing and the comments before that too. And I think a place that I'm wanting to just tease out a little bit is this sense of, you know, bringing something forward, and perhaps this is what you're sharing, meaning with, you know, epistemic violence, not that there's a certain way that there can be a colonization from integral, that we think we've got the goods that we need to give to them, and that I think people can pick up on that. And when we flip that to how do I bring the fullness of who I am through my practice, that I can meet and allow people to be themselves with me. And in that open field, something can change, but it's not because I'm doing it, because it's so easy to get attached to my doing that I think there's a subtle hook. And I liked what you brought up, Karen, about the reference to Ken saying there's, you know, a Darth Vader move at all the stages. And so to me, I'm looking at like, you know, what are my Darth Vader moves, so to speak, with respect to integral or thinking that I know or whatever, and how to become conscious of my own shadows in that, and to yield that to a more, you know, open and welcoming space that, as you were saying just a moment ago, Regis, that when people come into that, that they can feel welcome, that they can feel the connection to love, the compassion. And then as they join into that, something can start to unfold, but I'm not imposing my nervousness of needing to get everybody to integral on others so that they feel icky about it, like, oh, I don't want to be part of that. It's like, what's the open invitation that's patient, that trusts in the arising that we are a part of, that I don't own integral, or no small handful of us own integral, that we get to colonize others with it, but rather we get to embody that as best we can and allow the emergence that's already happening.
Wow. Yeah. You know, Regis and I, we met regularly for about over a year talking about this, the subject of decolonizing. It was something that came up, I think, in Jeremy Johnson's mutation salon. I mean, and Regis was fascinated, and I was fascinated by his fascination. What does it mean to decolonize, really? And the conclusion I came to, I'm not sure if Regis did, we need to start by decolonizing our own minds. That's the Darth, you know, the Darth Vader move, because I have seen so much, especially in people who are new to integral and are excited. Oh, we've got to go out and preach. We've got to change people. We need to help people become more integral. We need to help people grow up the stages. And you even see this too much in Ken Wilber. And this is, and you just expressed it so beautifully, Eric, that's one of the things we would be well advised to realize. This is a subtle form of colonizing. This is part of the Darth Vader move. And I love what's coming up in this group space, because what people come up to a new structure stage when they are ready. My metaphor in my current state of ignorance, my current metaphor is a snake has a skin that fits it, but then when the snake grows and the skin is too small, a new skin starts forming underneath the old skin. And when the time is right, the old skin splits and starts to shed. And then the snake will look for something to rub up against to rub off the old skin. But if we try to help the snake by tearing off the old skin before the new skin is ready, the snake's going to run slither away like hell. We're not doing the snake any favor. People move up at their own pace. What we can do is the space you just defined so beautifully, Eric. Create, co-create, and be in the space where we welcome them as they are and see them as they are. And now I'm remembering the conference 5.5, nearly 6 years ago, my first integral conference, the What Now conference in Denver, when Ginny Whitelaw, I've mentioned this before, when Ginny Whitelaw got up, and the question was, how do we deal with people who who are in a different stage than we are? And she said something that just knocked my socks off. She said, we meet them where they are and we fall in love with them. As far as that was a third tier answer as far as I'm concerned. Just, can we be clear enough with our own stuff, our own shadows, our own issues, to be that space where the other person can be who they are and feel seen and affirmed and welcomed. And that's part of the challenge too.
Well, and what's neat about reading an Everyone Culture book is that Keegan and Leahy kind of lay this out, like, the whole idea that they have in that book and making observations about it is that you're giving people this like an enabling constraint as opposed to a governing constraint. I think that's where the colonization versus not colonization thing are. It's okay to treat systems that way and inanimate things that way to some degree, but if you're putting an enabling constraint on somebody, then they get to grow. And they even said in the book that a lot of burnout, psychologically especially, is just as a result of not experiencing any development as you're in your job. And so if you're in an organization, even an organization like this one, if we didn't all feel like we were growing and learning and developing, we wouldn't keep coming to this. But because we do feel so much development and so much nourishment, we're enthusiastically coming to this, right? And so that for me is the defining characteristic of it, in terms of whether or not something has got some kind of hidden kind of violence in it, is, if I'm saying here's a constraint, but this is a constraint that's enabling you and not, like governing you. And even inside of the current DAO structure that we're talking about, almost all of them are like, okay, we need governance. I'm like, what we need is a different word than governance, because governance is a governing constraint mode of thinking. What I'm trying to do in this group, and I think in any meta modern group, is you need to think about things with an enabling constraint on them. And I think to a great degree, integral thinking and Ken Wilber's work is all intended to do that with and for people, and recognize when people really aren't in that place, right? And just have that be okay as well, and to not think that you're better or worse because you're dealing in governing constraints versus dealing in enabling constraints. But when you're talking about organizations and things like that, I think there's a feeling state that comes, around with that. But Anyway, I need to go, guys. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you as always, and really have an enormous amount of gratitude for the fact that you guys are here and doing
Great.
what you're doing. Thank you.
Great to see you again, Regis.
Good to see you. We'll talk again.
Regis. And this might be a good time to kind of call it for the evening if it's for everybody.
I just
So-
wanted to, one other thought that was coming as you all were speaking was about the idea that we are giving to someone else. And I think from a feminine perspective, what we need to tap in more into is to be able to receive from someone else, give someone else the opportunity to give to us, and we are receiving. And so what is it that we can receive from those that we have determined are lesser developed or whatever? And then the other notion was about falling in love. That is also a surrender. It's a giving of yourself and a receiving of the other. It's a giving and receiving. And then the notion of falling in love a lot of times has been spoken about in terms of it's almost like insanity. You know, it's a form of insanity to fall in love because it's not reality necessarily. The whole falling in love phase of a relationship is projected. You know, I'm projecting the best of myself onto the other person and vice versa. And so we're living in this false notion of reality, only seeing the best in each other, which doesn't, as the honeymoon phase. And then you actually come back into the actual reality of an actual relationship, which would include the so-called shadow, or would include the opposite of what we envision. So I'm kind of thinking, trying to put all that together in terms of a future human would be to project forward not only the highest and best of what we envision, but also including the potential and being able to fall in love with its opposite. You know,
sounds like a very rich subject for a long, deep conversation.
Yeah, which we don't have time for, which I don't have time for either. So.
Not tonight, but maybe sometime in the future we can pick this up and carry it forward.
Yeah, putting the seed out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Marjorie, I'd like to, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to share, Marjorie, that was very beautiful. That was very, very needed. Integral came from a very masculine person's mind, you know, and it has a lot of masculine characteristics to it. But I just love the way you said that we're imagining a person that we're trying to help be more full and more capable and more joyful and stuff like that. Well, what are we doing to receive that person? What do we want them to stand still so we can stuff stuff in their ear and their mouth? I mean, let's listen. Let's ask them who they are. How can we receive them in love? Love is not just about penetrating, you know. Love is like accepting and
receiving,
being open. And I love that, Priya. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Anything else here? Well, thanks everyone, and great discussion today. So thank you all for being here and sticking with it to the end.
What a beautiful note to end on.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. See you next time. Thanks.
For further information, including upcoming events, resources, links to our Facebook and Meetup pages, and our fabulous donate button, please visit our website at sandiegointegral.org. Donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue to provide information and connection within the Integral community.